Hey guys, it's Jay Calderon with 12rounder.com, and I'm here to give you 12-rounder radio, of course. Thanks for listening, all of you that do, and I hope you guys continue to. And of course, comment, share, like, subscribe, all that great stuff. And love to hear from you guys. So be sure to keep commenting, and I'll get back to as many of you as I can, of course. We'll start off, of course, with the weekend we just had in boxing, most of it taking place at the StubHub Center in Carson, California. The main event, Kell Brook caused a bit of an upset, defeated Shawn Porter, taking his version of the welterweight title in the process. Pretty interesting. I got that one wrong, of course, but nonetheless, it was a pretty interesting fight, pretty good fight, I thought, and they got the decision right, which could have been a bit dicey considering the circumstances, but in the end, majority decision or not, the decision went, in my opinion, in the right direction, so that's always a good thing. Deontay Wilder stayed busy. Jorge Linares looked impressive. Omar Figueroa got a stoppage. A lot of good stuff there in the semi-main event. Anthony Durrell defeated Sakio Biga, taking his title at super middleweight, of course. And to check out the rest of the quick results, you can check the link below. It'll be in the description. But really the news, of course, over the weekend was that the arrival of Kell Brook finally happened. That's really what people were most interested by it when it was all said and done. Yeah, sure, there were some decent fights. Figueroa versus Daniel Estrada was a decent fight, but the news really came in that main event. And it's news in the sense that this is the first time, or this is why I think it's news, of course, this is the first time in a very long while where the guy that won set himself up so big in so many obvious ways that it just hasn't happened a lot in boxing. You can see the progression of a fighter usually, meaning you can see the progression of a fighter usually. You can see that he's taking his time, the team's trying to build him up, and he's trying to, see his way into whatever division he's plying his trade. They're going step by step. They find the right names. They find the right guys. Then he beats someone who probably was a little bit beatable at that time. He should have won, but it still looks impressive. Good name on the resume. Then they go through another guy, and, pretty good. Same kind of guy, maybe a little bit better, a little bit fresher, and he gets that win. And then all of a sudden you see, here are these options, this option, that option, and the options get bigger so long as that fighter keeps winning. With Kell Brook, it's a little bit different. With Kell Brook, it looked as though that was the plan initially. He fought guys like Matthew Hatton, brought in an American and Carson Jones. All these fights seemed to be coming at just the right time. And then things stalled a little bit. By his own admission, Brook took his foot off the gas a little bit. It was hard to make fights for him. He struggled against Carson Jones. And in the first fight, that is. The second fight was what it was. He got the win, and that's pretty much all there was to that. But it was, things seemed to stall for him. Then when he finally worked himself into a position to get a shot at the title, all of that drama unfolds. He gets an injury. Devin Alexander, a welterweight titleist at the time, gets an injury. And you're just left with this idea, just wondering what is going to happen in this guy's case. And it happens again. The fight gets canceled again. And ultimately, Shawn Porter takes advantage of it. Then you look at Shawn Porter from that moment. Shawn Porter upset the odds, of course, in the Devin Alexander fight. He wins the title. And then he sort of enacts that same plan, take out someone like Paulie Malignaggi, a good name, someone who's been there, done that, who knows his way around the ring, and yet and still, Porter, does what he's supposed to do if he's supposed to be, a legitimate world-class fighter. Whereas Brook had to sort of skip over that phase of the progression of his career. He took on, yes, again, Matthew Hatton, like I said. He had the Sinchenko fight, sorry about that. He had the Sinchenko fight, of course, but it wasn't as though it was the biggest name possible. That, Sinchenko was the same guy that struggled with Ricky Hatton just a few months earlier, had lost to Paulie Malignaggi, and other than those two fights, had really not fought anyone of note, really. It wasn't as though this was just some insane thing that Kell Brook was to beat him. But once he won that fight with Porter this weekend, everything seemed to change in a sense. Now he had Amir Khan aggressively, I should say, trying to pursue a fight with him now. Now he does legitimately enter the Mayweather sweepstakes in 2 degrees to a certain extent. And he also has potential showdowns with the likes of Keith Thurman, or even a rematch with Porter that could happen in Sheffield. He is the guy that sort of has that right now. He is very popular in Sheffield. He can sell 10,000 plus tickets in the right venue at the Motor Point. He can call those sort of shots, and he is the guy with the title. And that happened literally within the span of about 45 minutes to an hour, however you want to look at the fight's length. It happened pretty quickly. Because if you look at it with Amir Khan wants, of course, in the end, his ultimate goal is to get a shot at either Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather. Now, if he wants the Floyd Mayweather fight, the one that seems the most tantalizing to him, he's got to bring something extra to the table. It's not just the welterweight title, but it's also having taken out another one of his options in Kell Brook, if he's able to do that, he being Amir Khan. And it would only make Khan a bigger draw in the United Kingdom. I mean, it just would. So if he's able to do that, he really puts himself in the best position possible to get the thing he wants most. Even a Pacquiao fight has some more credibility to it if Khan comes into the fight with a title of his own. Pacquiao has his own. It's a bit of a unification fight of sorts, former rivals, former stablemates. It seems to make a lot of sense to be able to make that fight all the more available to him. So Kell Brook does hold, in effect, the keys to the door Khan is trying to walk through at this moment. And Brook himself does have a decent case he could make in terms of trying to face Mayweather. I mean, there's some belief, some thought that Mayweather does want to fight one time in England before he retires. Well, Brook seems like a decent enough choice, especially if you consider that if it's at all possible, Brook would still be undefeated. He could have a title at welterweight, could take out perhaps another name. And at that point, that fight would almost seem natural if Mayweather was interested in fighting in the United Kingdom. Now again, for Mayweather, the best thing that could happen is that Khan and Brook take care of each other, and one of them wins, obviously one of them loses. This way, if he decided to come over to England, he would have the ability to pick the guy in the welterweight division. But that's again if he even wants to do such a thing, and my gut tells me he doesn't really want to go over to England. That being said, either guy with enough behind them, a couple of wins from here till whenever they might fight Mayweather, would be an okay choice. It would at least be something different, something interesting, would have some international flair to it. And so those fights are all possible under the right circumstances. And Brook really opened up that door for himself with literally one fight. It wasn't a guy that I don't remember the name of prior to the Shawn Porter fight that opened this door. It wasn't most of the fights before that. The Sinchenko fight was good, but it didn't make everyone believe in him. It was a good performance. In the performance, he got rocked a little bit, so it sort of left a window open for some doubt there anyway. But ultimately, this performance did open up those doors. It opened up the doors to the Amir Khan clash. It opened up the doors to potentially a Manny Pacquiao clash, depending, again, on what might be able to happen in the future. And of course, it also gave him the opportunity to call a bit of the shots, not be on the outside looking in, hoping to get in to the main stage. It gave him a shot to really be able to make some moves while not looking like he's just desperately calling out some of the bigger names. But anyway, in any event, it was a very interesting fight. I loved the very simple use of the 1-2 from Brook. That's what, to me, was so interesting about that fight. I remember even when I was making the prediction and picking Shawn Porter, incorrectly I might add, it was one of the keys to victory for Brook, in my opinion, was shooting shots down the center of the wider shots of Porter. When Porter tries to come in, his shots tend to be a little wide. He can hit you with a straight shot, obviously. He can hit you with an overhand shot, or he can just go right down the pipe, but he tends to come in a bit wide if he's trying to shoot in. If he's trying to get a good in and out style going, he's going to come with a bit of a wide left hook or a wide right hand for that matter. And Brook brilliantly just shot a simple, fundamental 1-2 right down the middle every time Porter tried to do that. I mean, I can recall a few moments, I can't remember exactly when they happened, but I can recall a few moments in that fight where I saw Brook, even though he didn't get the timing exactly right on his jab or exactly right on his right hand, he would just shoot it out there and just do enough to stuff the momentum of Porter. It was really a brilliant use of such a tactic, and of course he also remained tall. He's a taller fighter. He used they have the same reach. You wouldn't have thought it though if you looked at that fight, because his shots were straight, whereas again Porter's shots bent a bit, which makes your arm shorter. So the guy who's going to get there first is the guy who throws those straight shots. Of course, hindsight being 20/20, I should have gotten this right if I know so much, shouldn't I? But I digress. The point is, it was a brilliant display, great performance. A lot of people were saying, oh, he shouldn't have been holding. Oh, he was holding too much, should have been warned. I don't know, but last I checked, you do have the right to hold from time to time, for the record. It does happen in fights, number one. Number two, you have the right to hold if a guy's coming in and rushing in and causing two headbutts that cause cuts on around both of your eyes. And if you're going to warn Brook for holding, you have to warn Porter for hitting behind the head. I mean, he didn't do that every time when they were being held. He sometimes just hit behind the head. At the end of the day, it's a fight. Sorry. It happens that way. I'm not saying, you should be able to come into the ring with brass knuckles, but a fight is a fight. There are going to be some ugly components to it from time to time. We are, after all, rooting for guys to punch the other in the face. It's not as though the fights are going to be filled with nice qualities of two gentlemen calmly taking care of each other. No, I'm sorry, it's a fight. Sometimes it happens. You have your own strategies. The ref lets it go, which I'm glad this referee did, because they made for the fight they had to work, and there were times they could have worked, and there were times when Porter started holding towards the end of the fight. So they were allowed to work. I'm glad it happened, and you got the result you got. But again, as good of a position as Brook has put himself in, that's down the line. What most interests me coming up in the boxing world is that the next week or so of boxing isn't going to be, well, it's just not going to necessarily have event of the year written all over it. However, in the month of September, once we get into it just a little bit, we're going to be treated to a lot of very interesting fights. We have Akira Yagashi, I believe is how you say his name, against Roman Gonzalez for the flyweight championship of the world. That is a massive, massive fight. It's going to be supremely underappreciated in this country being America, of course. But that fight, I don't know how to put it into its proper terms. It would be like, I don't even know how to put it. It would be, it's the equivalent of watching maybe something like, I don't want to say Mayweather-Pacquiao. It's so cliche, and it's probably not even accurate in this case. It's not that big even for the division. But insofar as flyweight fights go, it's pretty high up there. Gonzalez is a guy that a lot of people consider the best kept secret in boxing. Yagashi is the legitimate flyweight champion of the world. He's also a very skilled fighter. They both bring a lot of different things to the table. It's just a very interesting fight, and I think it's going to be criminally underappreciated in this country. And that opens up the month of September, really. Then you have, of course, the world heavyweight champion of the world, Vladimir Klitschko, taking on unbeaten Kubrat Pulev. Should be an interesting fight. I think we all know how that one goes, but nonetheless, the events over there in Eastern Europe tend to, especially with Klitschko fights, tend to be big. They tend to be beautiful. So hopefully they keep putting on enough of them, and America takes a cue from them in terms of how to put on a damn show when it comes to the before and afters of a fight. In any event, that fight's going to be happening. And then, of course, you have the same day, I believe, you have Carl Frampton taking on Kiko Martinez in a rematch. Of course, this fight has a lot more at stake. Martinez claims to be hitting his stride a lot more. Frampton has a shot at winning a title, which would match at least the success of his biggest rival in Scott Quigg, which could set up a couple of interesting fights there, of course. It's a very interesting fight. A lot of people are forgetting that while Frampton did stop him in I believe, the 9th round, it wasn't the easiest fight for him. He had to fight for that stoppage. And it'll be very interesting to see if he shows signs of progress, meaning if he can prove that he is even better than he once was against a guy who has all the reason in the world to be as confident as possible. It'll be interesting to see how Frampton responds to someone who feels like at this point they can win. Because Martinez had other options, but he was, A, offered a lot of money, and B, to an extent, had to feel like he could beat Frampton. And it'll also be interesting to see what Kiko can do in terms of adjustments and what have you. And this is, keep in mind, like within the first 8 days of September. So the month of September is really going to start to light us up with boxing at its very best, and should be pretty interesting. But again, we're going to be sitting here waiting for about a fortnight until any of that stuff starts happening. In any event, we're just about done on this side, so be sure to click over for part 2. We're going to be talking about Jay-Z's Rock Nation Sports entering the world of boxing, what it might mean, what he might be trying to do. This is all going to be speculation, but why not? That's kind of what I do here. And we'll be talking about it a little bit more, so be sure to click over to part 2. And again, like, comment, subscribe, and then click over to part 2. How about that? Do it in that order. Let's try it that way. And, yeah. See you there.